Alright you guys, today I'm going to be going over everything I know about the payment protection plan. First, I'm going to start with some updates, then I'm going to go over how to apply, when to apply, what to do during the use of the loan, and I'm going to be going over a few extra things that I put on there that because I went through like 30 or 40 pages and articles and all this stuff, reading everything I can about it, checking out the lender application, the borrower application, everything. So I'm going to be telling you kind of all the interesting stuff that I found aside from, the main important things. So as far as the updates go, they changed the interest rate and term from 0.5% to 1%. So you're paying 1% interest on the loan. And then they changed the term from 10 years down to 2 years. The reason is the bank did not want to play ball with the SBA and the government, and they negotiated it down, 80% on the term time and another 100% on the interest rate. So now you've got to pay, instead of 0.5%, you got to pay 1%, and you have to pay it off in 2 years. That's if you spent it on unauthorized costs, because as I'm sure you've heard by now, because you've probably done some other research, is if you spend the money within those 8 weeks on authorized costs, then you're going to be covered. But if you spend it on unauthorized costs, then you're not going to be covered, and you're going to have to pay that 1%, and it's going to be within 2 years. So just keep that in mind, if you're deciding to spend it on unauthorized costs. Now, one important thing as far as updates go is that the Senate is gone. They're on vacation. They're like, hey, this seems like a good time to go. Let's just take off and be gone for 20 days during one of the worst crises in the world. So that happened. And what the problem with that is, aside from a million things, is that Trump is saying, hey, the second that this money runs out, I'm going to be able to request more. And that's true if the Senate was there, but they're not. So they also didn't sign anything into order to be able to remotely vote. So if we run out of money and we're not able to request more money till they get back, and then it takes them a few days when they get back, it messes everything up, because banks like Wells Fargo, they are only going to accept $10 billion worth of loan applications, and they've already exceeded that limit. So now they're no longer accepting applications, and that they're already at $10 billion within the first few days. So once all of these banks hit that $350 billion mark, and they've put out all those loans, the businesses need more money, because and they need it now, because the speed of this was the whole point of it. The whole point was for people to be able to get the money quick within a week or two. But the problem is our system isn't designed for this. One of the issues is the banks don't have an automated system, and we're having trouble figuring out how to get it, and the SBA wasn't able to give them the proper login information, and there's all these little problems. And so now they're having to go in manually to the SBA loan application program and fill it out like they used to. And the SBA is only used to giving out a total of 66,000 loans in a year. So their system isn't set up for this, They're only used to giving out 66,000, and we hit 66,000 in the first half a day or something like that from one bank. So there are a bunch of problems with that and the whole Senate leaving thing. But anyways, as far as how to apply, you're going to want to check with your bank. Any federally insured credit union or bank, or anybody that's already given out SBA loans, is going to be able to do it. There's 1,800 different banks that give out SBA loans, so most likely yours is going to. And the reason yours is most likely going to is because it's 100% federally insured, which means if you default on the loan or something like that, your bank is going to, or the SBA and the government is going to take the responsibility for that. They're gonna back that loan. And then aside from that, the banks are also able to take these and package them up into sort of mortgage-based securities and sell them on the secondary market to investors. What that does is it creates liquidity for them so that they can keep giving out more loans, because the bank only has a certain amount of money to give out. So if they're able to take those loans and essentially sell it to somebody else, then it gives them some liquidity to keep on giving out more loans. And since it's 100% guaranteed, they're most likely going to do it. So that's why the banks have sort of an invested interest in doing this, and that's why I'm sure your bank is probably going to. But if you're with Wells Fargo, you may have to check out some of the other banks and talk to them. One issue that I could see with that is, for example, Chase said that you had to have a business account with them since February 15th, 2020. So if you're with Wells Fargo and you didn't apply yet, and you're in that situation, or you couldn't apply yet because you're self-employed or a contractor, because you can't apply until the 10th, then there may be an issue there. So alongside that, yeah, if you're a small business, for the most part, you're going to be able to already start applying. If you're self-employed or a contractor, you have to wait until the 10th. So I'm not sure if they set aside, for example, Wells Fargo, hey, 10 billion and then a few billion for the self-employed and contractors, or if that's it and now you weren't even able to apply and you still weren't able to get it. I'm not sure about that one little kind of caveat, which is pretty important, but there's not a whole there's information about this, but there's not a whole lot of information, even from the SBA websites and their own applications and everything that I took a look at. But anyways, when you're applying, you're going to have to put your payroll expenses for the past 12 months. And when you're spending the money, you're going to have to spend it on authorized uses. So those two things are going to be the same. The payroll cost for what they were and what they're going to be can only be these things, if that makes sense. So when you're applying, you're going to want to take a look at your payroll cost. That's going to be salary and wages, vacation, sick leave, healthcare, retirement benefits, state or local, but not federal taxes. And then you're not going to include payment of an individual employee over $100,000. So they're only giving you basically enough money in the loan to cover paying your employees up to that $100,000 mark. So you're also not going to include, like I said, the federal withholding, so no federal taxes. And you're not going to include the sick leave or family leave that qualifies for Section 7001 or 7003 of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So if you had to give people sick leave or family leave, it most likely qualifies for a tax credit, underneath this Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So in that case, that's when you're not going to put the sick leave or family leave. But if it doesn't qualify under that section, then you can put it in your payroll expenses. Now, then after you get all of those numbers, you're going to want to take your average monthly payments divided by 12. So if you had to pay all of your employees like $1,200,000 over the period of a year, you would divide that by 12, and then you would multiply it by 2.5, and that would give you the loan that you're going to get, which would be about like $250,000, and that would cover you for about 8 to 10 weeks, hopefully. And how they have it set up is that you're essentially going to be getting, double the loan plus 25%. So that's how it ends up around that 2.5 number. And some interesting things. You can pay the interest on your mortgage, but you can't pay down the principal. You can pay your rent and utilities, and you can pay interest on your other debt obligations, but you cannot pay down the principal. Now, during the use of this loan, you're going to have to prove afterwards that you deserve the forgiveness because you paid for these authorized expenses. So go and take a look at what your bank's specific list of authorized expenses are, because for whatever reason they might put one thing but not another, and take a look at what the SBA says the authorized expenses are. Make sure you're only spending it on authorized expenses, and then put that into a separate checking account. Try to open up a separate business checking account. That way all of that money it's not touched by you, okay? It's something, it's completely separate, and you're keeping track of putting it only into authorized expenses, because the last thing you want is to have to pay back $70,000 and business is super slow or non-existent, and you've got to pay it back in 2 years, plus the 1%. Now, Here I have a few of the, I looked up some of the websites, one community bank and then Chase Bank, and I took a look at what their website said for the payment protection plan. And they're pretty much the same as the application, they just laid it out a little bit different. But it says, you may be eligible for a loan under the Small Business Administration, what you need to know about the Paycheck Protection Program on March 3rd, da-da-da-da-da. So, have the following information. That's what I wanted to go over. So, Chase, what they want from you is the date you started your business, detailed information in order to calculate the average monthly payroll cost for your employees for the past 12 months, as outlined by the SBA, your annual revenue, and your business mailing address. And then for the United Community Bank, what they wanted was a copy of your 2019 tax return, all schedules. If a 2019 tax return has not been filed yet, then a 2019 profit and loss statement and balance sheet. 12 months of payroll records, costs defined below, for the 1 year period before the date on which the loan is made, organizational documents, and if multiple owners operating agreement, and then corporate bylaws or LLC documentation from the Secretary of State. So the United Community Bank sounded a lot more complicated, like they wanted a lot more stuff, but Chase made it pretty simple. And then most of that stuff is going to, or pretty much all of that stuff is going to be based on a good faith thing. So you're going to check a bunch of boxes saying that you are in need of the money and yada yada. And you know, as far as the good faith thing goes as well, when it comes to the how much money you're spending on payroll, I think some of the banks are going to be checking, and then other ones are going to be taking your word for how much you say you spent on payroll, essentially. Now, some notes: you can rehire by June 30th and still be eligible for loan forgiveness. And then they can sell it on the secondary market, like I said, and there are no loan fees. So typically there's an SBA loan fee that you have to pay when you're signing up and everything. They're not going to be having any of those. And let's see if there's anything else interesting. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, let me know and I'll see you next time.